Hey guys, in this week's episode, we're going to review Repo Man, the cult classic and a Casually Criterion. But before that, we're going to talk about Fleabag, the Emmy award-winning show, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and Kevin Feige is going to make a Star Wars movie?
I think it's Feige.
Feige?
Hello and welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris. And with me as always, fresh from the trunk of his car, is Mike. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Just got out, apparently. So,
Well, it's good to have you out of the trunk and with us. Also with us, fresh from overthrowing the government, is Justin with his punk rock sensibilities. How are you doing today, Justin?
I'm doing excellent. Mine was way more cool than yours was, Mike. You've been hanging out in a trunk, and I've been overthrowing the government.
Yeah. He gets to be a cool punk rocker, and I'm just a guy in a trunk.
Well, but you melt people when people open up the trunk, so...
Well, you didn't say that at the beginning.
That's just assumed.
Excuse me. If this is your first time listening, this is a Casually Criterion episode, which is a Criterion Collection-focused episode we do every other week, where we review a film from the Criterion Collection picked by the listeners. Before we get into the main review, we'll be doing our usual News on the March segment where we talk about recent news and things we've been watching. So if you haven't seen the movie, you can still listen. And then we will be doing a Casually Criterion review for Repo Man, directed by Alex Cox, spine number 654.
And on every Casually Criterion episode, the movies that we review are chosen by you, the listener. So if you want to vote in our polls to pick our Criterion films, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. You can also send us questions or topics to discuss on the movies to any of those social media accounts. You can also email those questions to casualcinemedia at gmail.com. And then, of course, if you haven't done so already, you like the show, help other people find the show by giving us a iTunes review, preferably 5 stars and no lower.
Yeah, give your criticisms 5 stars, and we'll listen to them. We're much more likely to listen to a 5-star criticism than a 1-star criticism.
What you call constructive feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't be mean. That's like the general rule.
I know it's the internet and stuff, and that's kind of how it goes, but...
And this is 2019, and everyone's mean, it seems like, on the internet.
Yeah.
So true. So, buck the trend.
Yeah. Put a little kindness out in the world. See what happens.
Thank you.
And make sure it comes our way. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. With that, gentlemen, are we ready to go ahead and move into News on the March?
Yes, sir.
News on the March.
All right, Chris. You have been absent the past 2 weeks, so I know the listeners are dying to know. What's been on your mind? What's going on?
Oh, I've had a busy couple of weeks. I got to listen to the episodes. They were both really great. Especially want to throw out a shout out to Peyton for filling in for me on the Barry Lyndon episode. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed listening to both those episodes. So good job, guys, in my absence. I wasn't quite sure if you guys are going to be able to handle it on your own, but you did. And so
the show actually ended up better. What do you know?
Next time I'm absent, if you guys could, mess up a little bit more so it doesn't seem like you don't miss me at all. I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, we'll do what we can.
Make me feel needed a little bit.
Yeah, we'll insert like a 30-second segment of us crying and just being like really morose and sounding like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah, where's Chris? Why isn't he here?
Yeah, he's supposed to be talking right now.
Yeah, that'd be really great, guys. I would appreciate it. Just for the future.
You got it.
You got it.
One of the things I wanted to talk about was Fleabag. You guys talked about it on your last episode, and it just got off its Emmy wins. Phoebe Waller-Bridge won a bunch of awards last week or the week before, somewhere in there. And I just want to tell you guys how much I love Fleabag, because it's really great. There are a lot of things I really like about Fleabag. One of them is the name. I think the name actually has a lot more meaning once you've seen the show, too. So that'll help out with the name problem that you had, Mike, last week. But
I mean, it's not like a problem in the sense that it makes me not want to see the show.
Right.
I'm just saying it's an unpleasant name.
It is.
It's like the word casserole. I don't like the word casserole. Casseroles are delicious.
I would watch a TV show called Casserole, though.
Ugh. Gross.
One of the other things that's really great about the show is Phoebe Waller-Bridge. She is very charismatic and just endlessly fascinating to watch. And this was actually based on like a one-woman play that she did. So it's very interesting. She breaks the fourth wall a lot, and she actually plays with that trope, or what would the word be for that device? She plays with that device a lot, and kind of usurps your expectations of breaking the fourth wall, which I find really interesting, especially in the first season, and then it changes in the second season, and it's really cool how that works. Both seasons are really great and really interesting to watch. I think they are almost like movies because they're like 6 episodes long. So it's like a half hour, 20 to 30 minutes, and 6 episodes isn't very long. It's shorter than The Irishman that's going to come out pretty soon. Like one season is shorter than The Irishman. So they're easy watches, and there's one through line through the whole season of each, or series as they would call them in England. But it's really great. And all the acting, everybody's like above the line great. Olivia Colman's in it, and she is amazing in it. She's kind of a minor character, but she steals the scenes that she is in. Yeah,
I bet. Olivia Colman's awesome.
Yeah. And Phoebe Waller-Bridge, I really have a lot of respect. Her writing or helping write the new James Bond film is really cool and gives me hope for that. There's actually another TV show that she wrote that also got a lot of love, but Killing Eve. Have you guys heard about that one?
I've heard of it.
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
Other than that, though, I've never seen her, other than in Solo, which a Star Wars story, which I think she was easily the best part of that movie.
Yeah, agreed. But yeah, so she's really great. I can't wait for you guys to watch it because I really want to talk about it some more. There's a lot of interesting things that go on in it, and I'm excited for you guys to watch and we can talk about it.
Where can I watch it?
It's on Amazon. It's an Amazon original, in fact.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I was always thinking this was like a BBC thing.
It is. It's in combination with the BBC. So it's like Amazon has like the US distribution rights or something along those lines.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So I don't actually have to watch BBC to be able to watch this.
No. If you have an Amazon Prime subscription, you can watch it.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone in the world knows that except for me. Because she won Emmys, and she apparently won multiple Emmys, and everyone knows about this show, and everyone is celebrating it. So, yeah, I definitely need to check it out soon. The fact that it is short and there's only 2 seasons is very appealing to me. Because, as I've mentioned, like the past, I think 2 episodes, I've been watching shows with my girlfriend, Doctor Who and Breaking Bad. She's watching both of those, and I'm rewatching them with her. And, man, there's a lot of episodes in those shows.
Yeah, for sure. I look at these more as films, with little breaks in them, because it has that through line through the whole thing. So they both feel very distinct from each other to a certain extent. They may be the same characters, but they're dealing with different issues. And there's no cliffhanger at the end of each season, to make you want to come back. It's
right. Well, because each season, in theory, there's not going to be another one, right?
Yeah, correct. So
she didn't even know she was going to do season 2 whenever she was ending season 1. Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And season 1 is so great. It's one of those things where, and I didn't watch it, but I've heard a lot of people say this. I watched it after the second season came out, but they were really worried about doing a second season because the first one all fits together so well. We don't want them to ruin it. And then the second season comes out and quite possibly is better than the first season. So it's one of those great things that really worked out. And definitely Phoebe Waller-Bridge is having her moment in the sun. So we'll see what she gets to do next, because she just had a big deal with Amazon too, where she's going to be creating content for them. So I'm excited to see what she does for them.
Nice. Hopefully she is able to spruce up and bring some life into the next Bond movie. I was not a fan of Spectre.
Yeah, neither was I. And what she says about the Bond film, there's a quote, because there's always the criticism that James Bond doesn't treat his women very well. And she's like, James Bond doesn't have to treat his women well. The movie has to treat the women well. Does that make sense? And so that makes sense and is smart, I think. So I'm excited to see what she does.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Cool. Remind me, you might have said this, but this is it a comedy series or like a drama series?
I would call it dramedy. It's definitely comedy. I mean, there's a lot of like jokes and stuff that are happening, and because she's breaking the fourth wall, there's like asides and stuff that work really well. But it's dealing with dramatic issues in a funny way, I guess. So that's a comedy, right?
I think so.
Awesome. So that's Fleabag, available on Amazon. Super popular. Justin, what have you been up to this week?
Well, I finally watched a movie that wasn't one we were going to do for the show. I think like the last couple of weeks I've been kind of light on movie watching just 'cause I've been busy, but I finally had some extra time this weekend. And my fiance and I rewatched for her first time, my second time, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Nice.
Ah, yes.
Have we all seen this movie here?
Yep.
You know I've seen this movie.
Okay. Just making sure.
I think you watched it with me. Or we watched it together.
Maybe. I only recall one other time watching this movie, which would have been my first time, which I know I didn't watch with you.
Oh.
Actually,
did you watch my copy of it?
Maybe. Do I have your copy of it?
Well, at the time.
No. So the funny story about this, I guess, it's not super funny, but I'm going to say it's a funny story because it piques people's interest. Makes them lean in.
Do
and
go
listen.
on about this funny story. I can't wait to hear the end of it.
It better pay off or I'm going to be mad.
Okay. So the regular story about this is that
Interest
way
waning.
back before I before I was ever into film, I was just bored of like renting the same movies over and over. So I went with my girlfriend at the time when I was in high school to like the movie store and just asked the employee there of like, I want like a good movie, like a really good movie was essentially what I asked him for, which was in hindsight a dumb question. But his recommendation was A Clockwork Orange and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So I guess at the time I was like maybe 16, maybe 17, and was not like into film at all. Like I wouldn't have even listed like movies as a hobby of mine. Like movie watching wouldn't have been a thing I'd list as like something I enjoy above average. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so I watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest way back then, and that's, to my knowledge, was the only other time I've ever seen this movie other than this weekend.
Okay.
So that's why I'm not sure that we watched it together at any other point, because this was before we were really good friends.
Oh, I see. Well, in that case, I probably watched it with someone else. Sorry, whoever that was, and I forgot.
Yeah. But so I guess the first time I watched it, I was like, okay, that was okay. Like it was kind of good, but I didn't see what the big deal was. And I guess I've always assumed that it's better than I remember just because I'm older and wiser and a little bit more movie savvy than I was then.
Yeah, more movie literate.
Yeah. But I've always kind of just held on to that opinion of it of like, yes, it's good, but like I don't remember it bowling me over, and like thinking back on it, I don't remember it being great. Like just this like movie that I had to watch again or anything like that. But we watched it again, and I got to say, I think this movie is really fantastic.
Yeah, newsflash.
Yeah.
So, you know, I know that it won all of the Academy Awards back in the day.
Mm-hmm, all of them.
And was one of only 2 movies to ever do that, I think. But I'm here to right now definitively say this movie is really, really great.
Awesome. What did she think of it? You said it was her first time, right?
It was her first time. She loved it. And
Okay,
she spent, I think, the first 20 minutes trying to decide if young Jack Nicholson was really handsome.
Yeah, that's the age-old question, right? Jack Nicholson in the early 70s, it's interesting.
Yeah, well, I think the thing is, it's clear watching him in anything from that time period, and obviously things after that time period too, not exclusively that time period, but when he was like really prolific and in a bunch of great films, like you watch him and talent just exudes. Like you see this super talented actor being incredible in everything. And there's a certain amount of attraction to that where he's not maybe the most classically handsome guy, but he's
Charisma.
so talented that, yeah, there's an attraction.
Yeah, no, I get it. Charisma for days. Next, you should watch 5 Easy Pieces.
I think that it's 5 Easy Pieces or Chinatown next for her. to continue seeing Jack Nicholson movies from the 70s that she's never seen before.
Man, I love Five Easy Pieces. That movie's so good.
Yeah.
She's still she's still on the fence about whether he's handsome or not. Is that so you're gonna have to continue the Jack Nicholson marathon
until she decides?
Yeah.
I think early on in the film, there's a scene where he is playing basketball with a lot of the patients, and he's being very having a lot of fun and being charismatic with the big chief. And at that point, she was really charmed by his interaction with them. At that point, I think from then on, she's like, "Oh, he's so handsome." So I think we've kind of decided it. Although I think the movie gives a little. He's a bit of a mixed bag of whether or not he's a good character. I think that's part of the debate of the movie of how good of a person he is and how selfish is he being the whole time, which I think maybe colored her. I don't think it colored her opinion of his handsomeness, but she liked the character less by the end.
It complicated things.
Yeah. I also wanted to shout out the film guy or the film clerk that recommended those two films for you. That was such a dangerous question for you to ask. You could have ended up with something like Boondock Saints or some crazy film, this, hipster film clerk guy.
Sure. Well, at the time, I had probably seen Boondock Saints.
Okay.
So, I think any of those movies that are really, surface level average person, has seen that are, generally considered really good movies, whether they actually are or aren't. I had seen a lot of those. So I think when I talked to him, I was like, I haven't seen a lot, and I don't know that anything I've seen is, really, really good. Because at the time, I just watched, a ton of comedies and would rent the Kevin Smith movies over and over again. Not that there's anything wrong with those movies. I still really like them, but I was I wanted to see something that people consider to be a great movie, because I don't really know what a great movie is. And I guess I still didn't, because I didn't consider this one great. And now that I've watched it again, it is so, so, so good. I don't know. I guess it makes me think back on this time in my life before I had seen a lot of movies, and makes me think back to the video days and the video store days, because I think I watched this on VHS too, so maybe it was actually video. But yeah, it's fun to revisit those old films, especially ones you saw before you became very into film and you had a certain opinion of. It's fun to watch them again and have your thoughts on a film kind of completely different, on a second viewing.
Yeah, it makes complete sense, especially when you watch it so young. And like I said earlier, it's movie illiterate. You can watch a great movie, but what's great about it just may be completely lost on you, especially at such a young age.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it maybe makes the case too for just, if you don't like a movie and there's not something that just makes it, apparently bad, like bad acting or bad story or whatever like that. But if you just don't like a movie, sometimes you give it some time and revisit it again, especially if it's something that a lot of people kind of unanimously say is good. I think there's always value in revisiting something in time when you've changed as a person and you've grown.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially when you watch it the first time and you might just dismiss it as that was overrated. What's the big deal?
Yeah.
Be well, there's probably a reason.
Yeah, that's a really good example of when you should give a movie some time now that you've seen it, and then revisit it in 5 years, 6 years, 2 years, I don't know. However long's the right amount of time. Indeed. But yeah, that's my news on the march, is that One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is great. Breaking news. Yeah. So, Mike, what do you have?
Hot off the presses.
Yeah. Mike, what do you have?
Well, like I said earlier, I'm rewatching TV shows, watching with my girlfriend, but there has been some interesting news that has come up that I would like to go over real quick. The first of which is that The Irishman, Martin Scorsese's movie that he's been working on with Netflix, has premiered. And this is the 3.5-hour epic starring Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, and Al Pacino. Yeah, this movie's been kind of faced with infamous problems because of the de-aging technology that they are implementing. Apparently, this movie depends very heavily upon that de-aging technology. There are apparently several scenes where De Niro is straight up playing a guy in his 20s. Sounds like it might be courting disaster, right? Because I don't know of any movie where the de-aging technology so far has been like flawless, you know?
Yeah. This is kind of unrelated to The Irishman, but I recently rewatched X-Men 3, The Last Stand.
Ooh, that Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, that opens up with some de-aging that I was not aware of. Like, I had forgotten that happened in the movie, and I think it's in the early days of de-aging.
Why did you watch that movie again?
Well, I guessed it on a podcast that reviewed it, but that episode's not out yet, so I didn't want to talk about it until that episode's out and I can tell people to go listen to it.
Okay.
But so that's the only reason I rewatched that. But
that's a weird thing for you to do.
Just, you know what I haven't seen in a while? X-Men 3. Let's watch that one. That's actually one that after a few years probably doesn't get better with age, unlike One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah, it was bad when it came out, and it only got worse as time went on.
Possibly. You'll have to listen to that episode to find out what we all think about it, but you might not be far off. But yes, it's like, I think maybe they were inventing some of the de-aging software on that film, because it's very early and it's very rudimentary and not very good.
Well, I remember the first movie where it was like really prominently featured was The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. At least the first one that I remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and X-Men 3 was before that, too.
Oh, okay. So there you go.
I think that
it was
2006 or 2005, 6. Okay, 7.
Benjamin Button was 2007. I want to say X-Men The Last Stand. Without looking at it, I want to say 2005.
Yeah, I think that's right. 2005 or 2006.
Anyways,
back to The Irishman.
But anyway, so the de-aging technology, apparently how this is used, like the actual process of doing it, basically is just like in real life, like a facelift, but digitally, right? Like they pull back your skin and kind of animate it that way. I don't know how that's going to work with like his size, right? Like he's not the size he was in his 20s, that's for sure. Robert De Niro used to be a pretty skinny guy. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see like a drama so heavily reliant on this technology that up until now has never really been super convincing. But the word of mouth is that, yes, the de-aging technology is rough in some places, but the word of mouth around the movie is like overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah, that's all I've heard is very, very positive reactions.
Yeah, like 3.5 hours long, really epic and sprawling. Yeah, I'm hoping that it's going to be so good that like we don't even really pay attention to the de-aging technology that much. It's just another special effect, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Fingers crossed. I hope that's the case too.
Yeah. My fear is that it's going to be a lot like the Samuel L. Jackson in the Captain Marvel situation, where like the de-aging technology is at its best there as far as the way it looks. That's probably the best looking de-aging movie I've seen. But man, whenever you see Samuel L. Jackson move around, he is very clearly a man in his 70s.
Yeah,
right.
Or when they go to Coulson, it's also very apparent that they did not spend very much time on Coulson, so he doesn't look very good.
But anyways, so that's The Irishman. I'm looking forward to it. It premieres soon on Netflix. I don't remember exactly what date.
November 1st it comes out in the theater, and then I think it's November 26th that it premieres on Netflix. So
hopefully it'll come to a theater like in Dallas or something, and I can just go there and see it then.
Yeah, I definitely want to see this in the theater. That's one of the other things they've been saying. They're like, this is a movie that you should see in the theater, just like Roma. I'm sure, for the foreseeable future, we'll have this argument about wanting to see these movies in the theater or not,
Mm-hmm. The other thing that I wanted to talk about real quick is that Kevin Feige from the MCU is going to make a Star Wars movie. It has come down that he wants to produce a movie alongside Kathleen Kennedy, and this pretty much set the internet on fire. Like everyone started talking about this right away. Everyone wants a little bit of that MCU magic into Star Wars. What do you guys think about this? Do you guys consider this bad news? Are you interested? What would be your hopes for it? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I don't know how it could be bad news. I think that'd be looking at things very glass half empty. And I don't really want to have that outlook on things, Give it a chance.
Hang out on Reddit in any Star Wars subreddit for long enough and you'll find negativity. I
try not to. I pretty much only talk about Star Wars with you guys and a couple of choice friends because I enjoy enjoying my Star Wars.
Yeah, I like liking things.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, Marvel has had a good track record, and
Yeah.
Star Wars has had a good track record, in my opinion. Like, they haven't done a whole lot of horrible things. So
No, I agree. But I think what's so intriguing here is that, like, Kevin Feige is such a successful producer and has broken new ground as far as, like, movie franchises go, that I think the general assumption is going to be, oh, he's going to make Star Wars into Marvel. Some people are mixed about that. They want Star Wars to be, like, more of an event without so much saturation. And then some people are like, oh, right, this could only be, good for Star Wars because it's going to strengthen the brand and so on and so forth. But right now it's only one movie, but a lot of people are speculating that he's going to be taking over for Kathleen Kennedy when her contract is up in 3 years, if this movie goes well.
Yeah, I don't...
That's just speculation, though. Like, right now, I think they're sticking to their guns, which is just that, like, Kevin's a really huge Star Wars fan and he wants to make a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if if Disney wasn't looking at him and being like, work your magic over there.
My feeling on it is, I mean, I love the Marvel movies. I have a good time with them. One of the things, though, that I want from a Star Wars movie is I feel like Star Wars movies look better than the Marvel movies. They
definitely,
feel more distinct. I mean, I don't want to, like, look at the glass half empty or whatever, but I do worry about that. I don't want a homogenization of all the Star Wars films to look same and bland. So I like that when the directors get opportunities to put their own distinct style on it. Rian Johnson being one of them, which could get me crucified for saying that. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. And if he just produces it, it seems like there's a lot of people producing Star Wars movies, or making them right now. And
so at this point in time, this is crazy. So Disney announced that there's only going to be 3 Star Wars movies by the time, like, 2024 rolls around, right? And, like, the next one's not even coming until 2021. But Rian Johnson is apparently making a trilogy somewhere in that time. The Game of Thrones guys, D&D, they have, like, a trilogy that they are writing treatments for that they're going to produce. And now Kevin Feige's coming in. My question is, like, where are all these movies going to go?
Yeah.
So I think the timing of everything is what I'm most curious about, because it seems like I keep hearing every, like, 2 or 3 months that there's some new awesome Star Wars project coming into fruition. But none of them have actually begun yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think what's clear is that anybody worrying about this guy coming in and making Star Wars oversaturated probably already missed that boat to make that argument.
That's true.
Yeah.
I wonder if, Mike, you pay more attention to this than I do, but how sure are we that the D&D brothers or guys are doing...
the D&D brothers? I don't think they're brothers.
They're not brothers. Yeah, they both have the first initial. That's the only thing that needs to make them brothers. Anyways, is it possible that that's going to be a TV show on Disney Plus? Because I feel like that's more up their alley.
I mean, maybe.
I don't know.
I think it's quite possible that if any of them are going to get canceled, it's theirs. I feel like Rian Johnson is still pretty beloved in most corners of the internet, except for Star Wars fandom. Right? And even most Star Wars fans, I think, like Rian Johnson. It's just the very outspoken few. I don't think anybody at this point on the internet is a fan of D&D.
Well, that's true. Right now, they are on the outs.
Yeah, I think, and this is coming from a guy who watched Game of Thrones for 8 years, and I still think the last season wasn't a complete train wreck like everyone else did, right? I still think the last season has some redeeming stuff in it. Mm-hmm. And there's some really good stuff in it. Even that said, I can't deny that they really messed up by putting a finite amount of episodes and trying to end it in that amount of time. If any of them are going to get canceled Star Wars-wise, I would rather be those guys, because it seems like they might get bored of projects and want to move on quickly. But granted, they worked on Game of Thrones for like 10 years, so that's more than enough time to dedicate to one story.
I do feel like anybody who's in this, like, TV film world and are prominent in like their best years right now are people who probably got into doing this because they were fans of Star Wars, or Star Wars was an important film in, like, making them become movie fans, right?
Right.
And so, I don't know, like, all of these people that come in, I think that the passion is going to be there. More than like I'm worried about them getting bored, or like more than like Kevin Feige coming in and looking at this as some like let me Marvelize this whole thing. Like I feel like he's going to come in and want to do Star Wars because he probably came up loving Star Wars and dreamed of making movies one day.
Sure. Oh, I know for a fact that's the case with Kevin Feige. Yeah, he has said multiple times that he actually loves Star Wars. That's like his first love, more than Marvel even.
Yeah, that's why I just don't worry about them, like, I don't know, doing something weird with it and, like, turning it into something it isn't.
I agree. I'm not bummed out about it at all. I like it. I hope if the movie's a success, he can come out with regular, as long as it's interesting content. Maybe not as fast as the MCU, but I would like Star Wars to, like, have, like, 5 standalone movies that, like, build to, like, an Avengers-type crossover. I think Star Wars could do something like that if you introduce enough interesting types of characters and a story to unite them all. That could all be cool. Yeah. But that might just be like too much of a copy, you know? But I think regardless, Disney's going to need Star Wars to start making some money. They spent a crap load of money on it, and they're going to start needing it to... I have a feeling they're going to want to make it a cash cow like Marvel.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Rise of the Skywalker does. And it's also interesting, too, I think, because people have grown up with Marvel now, right? You know, when Marvel started 10 years ago, somebody was 10, you know, and that's their Star Wars, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. MCU is definitely the biggest franchise on the planet right now, for sure. Yeah. But anyways, it'll be interesting to see how it all unfolds. Does anyone have anything else they want to talk about before we go ahead and move into our review of Repo Man?
No, I'm ready to talk about Repo Man.
Let's do it.
What you got in the trunk?
You don't want to look in there.
Suppose you're thinking about a plate of shrimp. Suddenly somebody will say, like, plate or shrimp or plate of shrimp out of the blue, no explanation. No point in looking for one either. It's all part of a cosmic unconsciousness.
You eat a lot of acid, Miller, back in the hippie days?
Sell that car and send me your money. You don't need that car.
Put it on a plate, son. You'll enjoy it more.
Couldn't enjoy it anymore, Mom. This is swell.
What's this?
Charming friends you got there, Otto.
Thanks. I made it myself.
I had a lobotomy in the end.
Lobotomy? Isn't that for loonies?
Not at all. A friend of mine had one.
I do my best thinking on the bus. That's how come I don't drive, see?
You don't even know how to drive.
I don't want to know how. I don't want to learn, see? The more you drive, the less intelligent you are.
All right, so as always with our Casually Criterion episodes, we will not be doing a spoiler-free section. These are Criterion films that have usually been out a while or classics of some sort, so if you haven't seen them by now, you should go see it. Here's your spoiler alert. Pause the podcast if you haven't seen it. Go watch the movie and come back and finish listening.
That was it. You're in the danger zone now.
Yeah, except for the bumper.
Oh, yeah.
That was also part of it.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
Give me one cigarette you got up there. I'll tell you all about it.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
And here we go.
Repo Man was directed by Alex Cox, starring Harry Dean Stanton, Emilio Estevez, and Tracy Walter. The IMDb synopsis says, young punk Otto becomes a repo man after helping steal a car and stumbles into a world of wackiness as a result.
The world of wackiness. I love that they use the word wackiness in that.
That is an astute title, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's spot on, really.
Guys, this was my pick, so what do you say I go first?
I was just about to recommend that, so go ahead.
Okay, so I chose Repo Man because it had been a movie that I've wanted to see for quite some time. I've always heard about its cult status and heard good things about it in general. So this podcast episode was my excuse, ever since we were doing sci-fi. It is an odd movie to try to review. I'm sure you guys noticed that as well.
That's why I was glad you went first.
Yeah. I think part of that, though, is because this film is just so punk rock. Probably more so than almost any other movie I've ever seen. It's sloppy, ugly to look at, preachy, and downright on the nose in several places. But that's exactly the charm, I think, that it holds with a lot of people. I mean, it is a cult classic, after all. A lot of these cult classics have a lot of those descriptions in it, right? Ugly, challenging,
yeah,
etc. And somehow they become cult classics anyway, like Eraserhead, stuff like that. That said, I don't love this movie. I think it will be interesting to talk about, and I definitely enjoyed myself. But it's got some major issues, this movie, which I'm sure we'll get into. It is a challenging movie to get through, but I think there's a lot to unpack. So, Chris, you've been gone for a couple weeks. Why don't you go next?
So when I got to look at the movies that you guys picked a couple weeks ago, I think Repo Man was probably the one I was most interested in. But that was before necessarily I realized it was directed by Alex Cox, who also directed Sid and Nancy, I think a year later or 2 years later, which I wasn't a big fan of. So that kind of diminished my expectations for this film. And then I watched the trailer for the film just to kind of see what I was in for. And that diminished my expectations even further. But then maybe all that diminishing of expectations did the film a favor, because I actually really enjoyed this film. I think it's funny and weird and goofy, and the problems are somewhat charming to me. Like the fact that it's Shaggy is charming, I think. So yeah, there's a lot of one-liners. There's I think the one that I keep thinking about is they're like, let's go do some crimes, and he's like, yeah, let's go, let's go steal sushi, or let's go eat sushi and not pay for it. Stuff like that. There's a lot of cool lines in it like that are fun to me. You're right. There's pacing issues and weird stuff that's going on in here that doesn't necessarily work. But yeah, I found this movie really enjoyable. And I think it might even be more fun in as a midnight showing with a bunch of people that are super into it. Yeah, I liked it. I like it a lot better than Sid and Nancy that comes after it, because I think Sid and Nancy takes that punk rock stuff really seriously, and whereas this didn't feel like it was taking it as seriously. It kind of felt like, I think a good movie to compare it to...
Sorry to bother you?
Yes. Thanks for
I had the same thing written down, and I wanted to get it out before you did.
Yeah. I think Sorry to Bother You is a more well-polished film, but it's trying to... Both these movies are trying to say so much.
I would say neither of these movies are polished. But yeah, I think Repo Man is better.
You think Repo Man's better than Sorry to Bother You?
Hands down.
I disagree with that, but I also enjoyed Repo Man. But anyways, yeah, so I like this movie. I had a great time with it. Yeah, but Justin, what do you think?
Well, I think I'm not that far off from you guys. I mean, I wanted to watch this movie for a long time. I have a friend who's been asking me, I don't know, I think maybe once, twice, maybe 3 times a year if I've seen Repo Man yet. So it's one that's been on my list forever. And plus, I've kind of always enjoyed Sid and Nancy to an extent, even before we did our episode on it, just because I'm personally very much into punk music and the punk scene. So all of those movies I've been watching forever, like SLC Punk and Sid and Nancy and I don't know, other punk rock movies that I can't think of off the top of my head. But this has been one that I've been wanting to see. So I was really, really excited. And I think I'm a little disappointed because of my excitement in certain aspects of the film. But overall, I also really enjoyed it. Like, I just love the vibe of this movie. I love, like, the soundtrack, like the punk music. I love the way that it looks like a punk rock movie in the sense that it doesn't look very good most of the time. Like, it just looks kind of dingy and grungy. Mm-hmm. And I just love that whole aesthetic, and I love the world, like this like kind of like dirty, trashy Repo Man world that we're in. Like, so I just, regardless of anything else, like just aesthetically, I enjoy sitting there watching the movie. I think what caught me off guard is because I've never looked into what this movie is about. I've never watched a trailer for it. I knew nothing. And I don't think I realized for maybe even the first half of the movie that it was going to end up being kind of comedic and funny. And that was a lot of the tone of the movie. So I think it took me till about halfway through the film to like get on the same page with its humor. Either that or just like the humor ramps up in the second half of the film and got a lot funnier.
Yeah, I think the second thing that you said is true. I think that it's a lot funnier in the second half. Okay.
Well, by the second half, I was really like just enjoying it, enjoying the tone and like the cheesy one-liners, like you said, Chris. I spent a lot of time trying to piece together everything and keep together all of these weird little random like wacky moments that would happen and try to keep them all in my head because I felt like, no, okay, this is all going to add up to something and I need to put this all together for like this greater purpose. And I think by the end of the film, I realized that I'm kind of just supposed to enjoy the ride and have a good time with this movie. So I really think like a second viewing, knowing what this movie is going to be a lot better. But I did enjoy it. Like I like it. I think there's a couple problems I have with it. Like one, I think like Emilio Estevez's performance is a little off for me compared to everybody else. And I don't know if it's like he's not quite getting it or if like he's not landing the punchlines or like the humor isn't coming from him as well. But I just kind of had he rubbed me the wrong way a little bit where I just felt like I wasn't into him too much. What did you guys think of him?
Yeah, I'm not far off from you. One of the things I've like while I was reading up on the film or whatever, turns out like the punk rocker that was like robbing all the banks with the girlfriend and stuff, he was originally supposed to play the Emilio Estevez character, but the studio wanted an up-and-coming star, I guess, and so they put Emilio Estevez in it instead. So
I think that's like a better call, to be honest, because that one guy was a terrible actor.
Yeah. He may have been more punk rock. I don't know. But yeah, I think anyways, but that was kind of one of the things. There's a lot of weird behind the scenes stuff that was kind of happening.
Yeah, I heard there was like 3 or 4 different endings that the studio kept making him change.
Yeah, and instead of reshooting stuff, so like he was shooting towards so the 3 different endings, I will just lay it out. There's one ending where he is going, like he flies away in the car and joins like the rebels in South America and fights the power, right? And they didn't like that one. And so then the second ending was an atomic bomb. The car explodes in LA and kills everybody in LA. And that was probably less palatable than the first one. And then the third ending is what we get. But there's like things that you can see that kind of set up for the rebels in South America.
I think that would have been the better ending. That would have fit the movie more. Or the second one.
Yeah, and it actually feels more like Sorry to Bother You at that point as well. But yeah, so they're shooting towards these endings, and there are scenes in there that like are still for the old ending. So there's kind of like, that's why it feels weird. The movie just as a whole kind of feels weird because they're shooting towards one ending and then they have to change midstream and go towards something else, which I don't know. I actually almost find charming in itself as well. You know, like this troubled film.
Something Justin said earlier, I want to touch on, and that's the world that he was building. Everything looks grungy and dirty. The punk attitude on display all over this movie is very unique, right? Alex Cox built this very unique world that works as a very blatant jab at like the Reagan presidency and Reagan's economy in America. At that time, Reagan was very conservative and pushed a strong Christian agenda. And that is on display all over this movie.
Right.
Also, the poor people laying all over the sidewalks and things like that while there are campaign posters for some election in the background, right? Kind of just goes to show and highlight that, yeah, these politicians that are running for all these elections don't care about the poor people, right? This is the punk rock attitude. This is very much like, the punk rock attitude was very anti-Reagan, very anti-conservative. It's interesting that Otto is kind of this character that almost doesn't even seem like he values being a punk as much as he values just having some friends, but he doesn't necessarily take those beliefs with him as he gets a job as a repo man doing some of the most unpunk rock things you can do, which is like taking poor people's stuff from them. So I think this movie has a lot of like punk rock attitudes towards things, right? Very much like showing you a side of LA you don't ever see in movies because it's ugly and grimy. It almost seems like we're like in some suburb of, or like some like inner city. It doesn't even look like LA a lot of times because it's not filmed. It's not the LA that you normally see. It's very much like this punk rock dystopian world. It's like the Reagan economy on crack through the eyes of a punk rocker, right? Where everyone's overly conservative and overly Christian. That attitude is all over this movie. And I think it's interesting that that's the thing that appealed to you a lot about it, is, or at least you mentioned the aesthetic, but I think the aesthetic is very much wrapped up in those ideas.
I guess like it is preachy and, not very subtle about a lot of these things. But I think the fact that it treats so much of them in like a humorous light is what makes it pretty palatable.
Like tongue in cheek.
Yeah. Which, sorry to bother you, does a similar thing, but as compared to something like some certain like Spike Lee movies, I think like don't really have that tongue in cheekness to them.
No, all preach with no humor.
Yeah, so nothing to help it go down, I guess. But because I do really love like the televangelist stuff, like that part of the movie I thought was like super funny, and I think you could tell they're having a lot of fun. I like the idea of just coming out and the televangelist not just being like, send me 10% of your income. He's actually like, take out another mortgage on your house and sell your car and give all of that to me. Like, I love the over the topness of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would say that goes into other things that happen throughout the movie, or I guess that maybe not things that happen, but the like food items or like the store items that are really generically labeled.
Yeah.
Like in the scene where Emilio Estevez goes to his parents' house and they're watching the televangelist, he pulls out a can just labeled food.
Well, did you also notice that at first when they go into like a liquor store or a convenience store, all the liquor is like normal labels, right?
Yeah.
But then halfway through the movie, when they go back to the store, more and more products start to have the generic labels. Implying that, capitalism is starting to really take hold, and in a long enough timeline, everything's going to be like watered down corporate generic stuff,
One of the things that's interesting about that to me, the cans don't necessarily remind me of capitalism taking over. It kind of reminds me a little bit more of communism, like everything becoming generic.
I don't think that's what he's fighting. I don't think that's the message he's making. I don't think so either.
Yeah, I
it's a punk rock movie, so I think it's very much about capitalism.
Right. But I'm just saying that it strikes me more as communism than capitalism.
Well, I think maybe I could see where you're coming from, that like them all becoming generic and the same kind of feels like, well, we're eliminating choice and only having like one item. But I think what it's speaking to is I think there's an inherent vibe that you get of the food that's in that package is that it's not very high quality.
Right.
And that it's probably pretty cheap, pretty crappy food or product. And that would be the result of capitalism, right? Is that
right, yeah.
Make the product cheaper, less graphic design in the box so that we can turn a bigger profit.
Yeah, it's efficient and profitable.
Yes. So how does that capitalism / consumerism sort of idea play into the whole like Repo Man thing for you guys? Because he's out repossessing cars. Is Emilio Estevez kind of on a journey of sort of conforming to like being part of like the machine, part of the man? That's
I think for a time, because his dress and his attitude and his success at his job are all very anti-punk rock as the movie goes on. Like, he starts wearing like nice shirts. I think he like gets a less ridiculous earring as time, you know what I mean? Like, so like as the movie goes on, he looks less punk rock. He acts less punk rock as he becomes more, I don't know, successful at his job. And his job, I kind of mentioned this earlier, his job is very un-punk rock. It's very much like, what? You can't pick yourself up by your bootstraps in this Reagan economy that punks notoriously hate so much? Well, I'm taking your car. Like, to me, that's not very punk rock, right? Like, that's not something that I think if he were a serious punk rocker, he wouldn't be doing that. So it strikes me more as that like he wants to belong, because it seems like he trades in the punks for some coworkers and starts to bond with them, you know?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's interesting because you say he becomes more successful.
Well, I mean, successful in the sense that he keeps the job for a while and doesn't get fired, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm thinking about is how Alex Cox doesn't really go into the benefits that he's getting from his job, because it doesn't quite become focused on like that Emilio Estevez's character Otto is selling out, right? Mm-mm. Because you don't really have that side of the coin where life's getting better for him. It just seems the same. He's just got another job now. So I guess that seems like the easy way to go, right? Is if he was like more successful and he's selling out and like losing his punkness to become part of the man, like for success. Yeah. But I find it interesting that he doesn't really touch on what financial or statistical or like life improving benefits he's getting from this job. So I think you might be right that it's about coming together with people and like belonging. And
yeah, because he leaves the punk scene whenever his friend and his girlfriend or friend girl
like, he was gonna hook up with at a party,
yeah,
one off,
like,
I don't know.
Yeah, basically whenever they like decide to just laugh at him and hook up with each other, he leaves and then ends up finding a new clique almost, you know.
Yeah, and I think he sticks around. Like when he first starts, it feels punk rock because they're stealing cars and they're like having car battles with the Rodriguez brothers, right? You know, like, so
yeah.
it feels punk rock. Like the end result may not be punk rock, but like, you know, having car battles with the Rodriguez brothers and stealing cars and that sniffing amphetamines in the car all seems very punk rock. But I think the end result isn't, you know, like, so it's not necessarily that I don't know. It's weird.
Well, is that to say that there's not a whole world of difference between the punks and the people with, I guess, I want to say decent jobs or whatever, but like careers that are doing stuff like repossessing cars that are, you know, kind of perpetuating the cycle of like hurting the poor people? Like, there's not much of a difference between those perpetuating Reagan's economic plans and those who are going against it.
Yeah, I mean, there is that, and then you also see the punks actively.
Well, the punks, especially the one that steals his girlfriend, slowly actually is jealous of the normal life. Like towards the end, he's like, let's get married and have a baby and just be normal, you know, is what he's asking the girlfriend to do. So even the punk rock guy that's going around stealing feels like he has a tendency to want to settle down, you know?
And then you also have the character of Bud, Harry Dean Stanton, who is very much of like a different generation. And he has like the code he wants to live by and this and that. But even by the end of the movie, he's not even paying attention to that code. He talks about how he dresses like a cop because he doesn't want to carry a gun and he wants to be like intimidating to look at. But then later in the movie, as he starts like his weird decline, he starts carrying a gun. Like he had a gun in the convenience store when they were getting robbed. A lot of this movie is like the fight against a changing world, right? Like LA is changing for the worse. It's becoming, in this version of the world, right? In this Repo Man version of the world, it's getting more and more like
post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, kind of like dystopian sort of, right? Like
yeah.
It seems like as the movie goes on, everything starts getting worse. Like the generic food becomes more prominent, or the generic products become more prominent. Like lines and like the cliques all start to blur together. People's moral codes don't stand up. The alien threat starts picking up more and more. You know what I mean? It's just like, it seems like it all ramps up very quickly as the movie goes on.
Right. So there's like a seeming end to everything, including like being a punk rocker, or being a repo man. Like everything changes. Nothing is forever. I don't know. I mean, is that what you're
I don't know.
getting at?
To me, it almost seems like they're really building towards the end where like he gets fed up, leaves, and becomes a revolutionary and helps overthrow the government in South America, or LA is going to blow up. It seems like one of those two things are inevitable when watching the movie because the world just keeps getting more and more chaotic and things make less and less sense. The lines between people get blurred. So it seems like the logical step at the end would be to like, okay, leave the society, right? Go fight for something true. Or the society it can't get any worse. It's time to end it and have it all blow up. Neither of those things were able to happen. So instead we get him flying away, which I guess is kind of like the first one, which is that like, let me just ask you guys, what did you take from the ending? Did you take it as him getting fed up with everything and leaving the world? Like, okay, I'm tired of trying to have a girlfriend and trying to have a job and trying to be a respectable citizen. And I'm tired of trying to be a punk. I'm tired of trying to like fit in. I'm going to leave. You know, he leaves with, what's the dude's name? Miller?
Miller, yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody's named after beers.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Miller and Light.
Interesting. Yeah. I didn't even think about that. That's funny. But yeah, so did you take it as like he's leaving? What did you take the end as?
Well, I think, you know, it's the first part of what you said. Like you get fed up and you leave, and instead of going to fight with the revolutionaries, I think this ending that we get feels a little bit more like the character of Otto has come a bit more full circle because it seems a bit more selfish when he's deciding to get in the car and they leave. Like, I think he's just running away from something that's not working, or like getting away from it, you know, because there's the scene, I think, right around that, and maybe it's right before he gets in the car, can't quite remember, but where he's talking to the girl, Layla, and she's like, what about our relationship? And he's like, yeah, fuck that. And he gets in the car. I just think like that's kind of his thesis towards everything that's been going on in life in general is like, fuck that, get in the car and leave. But I think this way, it's like he's just leaving. He's not going for a better purpose. He's just leaving.
I honestly think that the movie was building towards something a little more profound than that, or at least that's the impression I got. So did you like this ending that's in the movie, or what are your thoughts on it?
I kind of thought, I mean, I think I like Justin's take on it better, but I kind of saw it more as like ascending to like a higher form of being type of thing. And like it gets in the car and ascends to the heavens, right? Like powder.
Well, it's like, yeah, he's lived long enough in this.
He's better than everything.
80s America,
you know?
and he's seen all the ugliness. Like, okay, so we have like televangelists, you know, robbing people of money. We have corporations feeding people crap. We have all this terrible, you know, poverty everywhere and grunginess all over LA. Screw it. I see it all for what it is, and I'm above it all. That's what you take the ending as.
Yeah, kind of. And then he just ascends to the heavens. Like he has a higher form of conscience after that, or you know, whatever. Like, and he's the only one that's accepted into the car, except for Miller, because you know you get the televangelists and they bring the Bible to the car and it shocks them, and then the government tries to they try to get near the car and it shocks them. So the only person that is accepted into the car besides Miller, who is already like way out there in his thinking already, but is Emilio Estevez's character, Otto. So I guess the question too would be, why does the car accept Otto? Is it because his attitude of fuck that to everything is there? And that's like...
Yeah, I think so. I think he is our surrogate in a sense that like he's supposed to look at the stuff that is unattractive about America. You know, all the stuff I just mentioned, the poverty, the food. He sees through, and he has the whole movie, but he's surrounded in a society by people who don't. And they're all living happily within the society, whether they're stealing, murdering, working, etc. It's all the same. Like, he goes to work and steals. His friends don't go to work and steal. It seems like the movie is painting such an ugly portrait of, I don't know if it's people or America in general, but it seems like we're very much supposed to come to the conclusion that, like, yeah, Emilio Estevez's character sees through it.
Yeah, maybe there's also something purgatorial about this world. and this sort of represents getting away from it.
Purgatorial?
The whole world that in Otto's life and everybody's life in it, it doesn't seem like anybody's really getting anywhere. It's just kind of a perpetual cycle.
Mm-hmm.
But
no one seems happy.
Yeah. One argument I will make to the idea that Otto has grown and transcended into and changed from where he started in the movie is that the ending lines when he's in the car and it's flying through the sky, I believe they echo some of the lines that he was saying when he was first meeting Bud, Harry Dean Stanton, right? Where he's like, "This is intense," and then the other is like, "That's the life of a repo man," or something like that. And those are like the exact same lines, which like that's another reason that it felt kind of full circle-y to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there is like a character arc or much of one for Otto.
Yeah, that's exactly like there's not much of a character arc for anybody really. Even Bud, who has like a downfall. I don't understand why his downfall happens. It just starts happening. People just do things in this movie, and like, what's that one girl who like worked Marlene, who like worked with them, and then for no reason she quits and then starts hanging out with the rivals that they've been chasing and fighting the whole movie. And then they're just good.
Yeah. Where that comes from though is from the original ending. Like I saw like a deleted scene, I think it was, but like she's got like a beret and the Rodriguez brothers are going to go down to South America and fight. So like that's a suggestion of one of those scenes that was left in that they couldn't like necessarily shoot around or reshoot. So they kind of left those things in that don't make any sense now in the current way the film is. So it's kind of this weird thing that's in there, you know. I think I really want that original ending because they were shooting towards it. And that even may be why Bud's character has this weird turn about halfway through the movie, because they were going to do one thing but they had to change some of the character arcs and change stuff around.
Yeah, I heard Harry Dean Stanton didn't get along with Alex Cox very well. So they a lot of scenes that were originally intended for him were given to another character.
I don't know if you guys were aware of this, but there is a graphic novel sequel to the movie.
Who's it written by?
I think Alex Cox.
Oh.
He wrote and did a graphic novel. It's called Waldo's Hawaiian Holiday. And it's supposed to take place 10 years after the movie ends and follow Otto's character. From what I read, he comes back where he's been held like captive on Mars, where he's been treated kind of like really, really well on Mars. And then he comes back to Earth, and his name is now Waldo because he's changed his name. So that exists if you want some more information on it. Also, there's a 2009 film called Repo Chick made by Alex Cox, which I was not aware of until I started doing research today. Otherwise, I might have tried to watch this and see what more there is to glean, but it seems like a very similar story. It has a 3.8 out of 10 on IMDb.
But do you think if this movie came out today, it would be well received, or do you think it's a product of its time and only exists like looking back at it and being like, yes, this charming 80s cult movie?
I think the latter.
I agree.
Well, it is such a product of its time because it's you've said it several times, but it's like about the Reagan administration or about punk rock, which neither of those things really exist anymore. So it is one of those movies. The politics is of its time. So we still get movies like it, and sorry to bother you, but
like those things don't exist in the way they did here, but the fight is very similar, right? Like the idea is like the things that are on display that he's commenting on in the Reagan economy of the 80s, right? Mm-hmm. Those things have been going on. Those are where those things started that are going on today.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense too. And that's where... So yes, I guess it would exist and it would be called Sorry to Bother You.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's, I think, what makes it sort of transcend being just a fun time capsule, sort of like a niche movie that's like fun to look back at these times. I think there are those movies out there, something we reviewed The Blob a while back. Like, I think that kind of exists in a bit of a time capsule where it's like fun to look back on. Even though I think it does have a little bit of deeper meaning, but like I think all of the stuff that is going on in Repo Man is only like intensified in some ways. So like it kind of it holds up in that way too, and it stays a little bit more relevant, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. This movie is still relevant. That's absolutely true. And it probably will be for quite some time.
Yeah, I think so. I think the only other thing that I have, I don't know how much more you guys have, but I did really enjoy some of the little details that I'm sure there are way more of that I didn't catch on a first viewing. But the one I did catch was the Tracy Walter character Miller, when he's talking to Otto about how like the world is like all a bunch of like does he say like a lattice of coincidences or something like that? Like it's all coincidence, and he's you think about a plate of shrimp, and the next thing you know, someone says plate or someone says shrimp, and you're like, whoa, that's weird. Yeah. There's like later on in the film, I think it's when the Rodriguez brothers are outside of somewhere, but there's like a sign on a window for a plate of shrimp special in a restaurant. And I do think there's a fun sort of precursor, and I doubt that Alex Cox was thinking this far ahead or like predicting this in any way, but the whole plate of shrimp thing really made me think of, you know, how like you have your phone in your pocket and you start talking about like Chinese food, and then you pull it up and you get ads for Panda Express.
Yeah.
Or like so local Chinese restaurant. Like I think, I don't know, that just popped into my mind whenever this whole like plate of shrimp thing happened, and like literally an ad for it popped up like on a restaurant window. It's like, that's kind of fun. But yeah, does anybody have anything else about Repo Man?
Let me ask you guys, so real quick, what was your favorite line? Like your favorite goofy line in this?
You took my favorite, which was like, let's get out of here. Let's go commit some crime. Like, I thought that line was just really funny and silly.
The way it's worded, yeah.
Yeah, like the second favorite maybe was whenever they're going to the hospital to visit Bud, and they get in the elevator, and the elevator closes, and like the woman comes up with like a walker, like a cane or something. He's like, "Oh, the elevator's out of order. Take the stairs."
Oh, yeah.
And it's like very clear that she can't, and it's impossible for her. And that was like really cheesy but funny to me.
Yeah, I don't remember. It's not even a specific line. I just like the scene whenever he first sees the girl. I can't remember her name.
Layla.
Thank you. When he first sees Layla and he's like hitting on her, and then he runs over that old lady's trash cans. And he gets mad at her for having them in the middle of the street, and she's like, "That's the corner of the street. You pick those up." And he's like, basically just like, "Fuck you, old lady," or whatever. I don't remember what he says, but it's very rude.
Yeah. I like that she comes back in the hospital.
Yeah.
She's like, "You're the guy who hit my trash cans."
Yeah.
And she seems really nice about it. She's like forgiving him. And
yeah, I like that scene.
Yeah, I think so much of this movie, I think, is just supposed to be enjoyed too, as much as it is like trying to say some stuff.
Well, it's more fun to talk about it afterwards than it is to watch it initially, I think.
I think so. And I wonder if the little eccentricities and charming things will grow on you on repeat viewings. I don't know how much I'll rewatch this movie over my lifetime, but it could get more enjoyable.
Okay, so real quick, just out of curiosity, out of 5, let's rate it real quick. Chris, what are you sitting at?
The 3.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Justin?
3.5.
Okay.
It's fair.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sitting at 3. I think that's where I'm at.
Totally fair. If you came at me with like a 1, I would be like, I get it. If you came at me with a 5, I might actually just not quite get it and have more questions for you.
Yeah, I wasn't enthusiastic in either direction. Like I said, it's more of a movie that's more fun to talk about after having seen it than it was whenever I was watching it initially, you know, and trying to like get something from it.
Yeah, I totally understand that.
Okay, so now that we're done with our review of Repo Man, what do you guys say we talk about the new Casually Criterion poll?
Yeah, let's do it. I want to know what we might be watching.
All right. So, in honor of Joker coming out next week, the theme of this poll is going to be villains, because Joker's a villain, you see.
That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure.
Okay. Well, now it's all clear. We're all on the same page.
Yeah, I appreciate you spelling it out for me. All right, Chris, you missed the last poll, so you got to go first on this one.
That's true.
Them's the rules.
All right, so under the villains heading or subtitle for this
theme,
under the villains theme for this, I have a couple of movies, and since I get to go first, I guess I get to pick whichever one I want. I have one that's kind of stretching it that I really want to pick. I'll put it to you guys if you guys think it's stretching it too much. I can pick another one.
Okay.
But so my first one is about a guy that hatches a grand scheme and enacts it and has a lot of rage and anger inside of him. But perhaps it is quelled by love, and that is punch-drunk love. So I think that like, given the different circumstances, that character could have been a villain, and he's, like, hatching schemes, could be very evil. What do you guys think?
I mean, you've already chosen it, so.
Yeah, It's a bit of a stretch. Go with this, that Philip Seymour Hoffman plays a character called the Mattress Man, which sounds like a villain.
True. He's definitely a villain.
How about that?
Yeah. And there's also the whole, he could be a supervillain, technically. Actually, you know what? Yeah. It works because there's that whole analogy of Barry
being Superman.
Being Superman, yeah. And
and he's got all that anger and rage, and like if he doesn't find Emily Watson's character, he turns into a supervillain.
Yes, and in some people's eyes, Superman is a villain.
That's true.
If you've watched Batman versus Superman or other things.
All right, fine.
So that's mine.
Yeah. I'll allow it because of that obscure explanation for Punch Drunk
I had to really work hard on that one.
Yes.
All right, Justin.
Okay. So I have a couple of options here, much like Chris, but I think I'm going to go with a movie that is a fiction movie, but it is about maybe one of the greatest villains the world has ever known in real life. And that is Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator. That villain being call. Adolf Hitler. Pretty
Makes
bad
sense.
dude.
Yeah. Adolf Hitler was a dick.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my villain. Adolf Hitler, The Great Dictator. That's my choice.
He's a great dick, that's for sure. No, he doesn't have one, but he is one.
Yeah.
Just cut that line. Yeah, that didn't go out well. Anyway.
All right, Mike, what is your choice?
The movie I wanted to choose for villains, mine's going to be pretty straightforward. This is a movie I have seen one time, and I've thought about it quite a bit in all the years since then, and it's just left me uneasy and uncomfortable and sad in a way that not many movies have ever been able to do, and that is The Vanishing. Not the Kiefer Sutherland American one. But the original The Vanishing on Criterion Collection. So
good. I like that movie a lot.
Yeah, with that. And for anyone who doesn't know what that's about, that is about a guy and his girlfriend are on a road trip, and they pull over to a gas station real quick to fill up on gas, and his girlfriend goes into the store to buy something, and she just disappears. She never comes out, or at least not that he sees, and he doesn't know what happened to her. And so he spends the next years of his life obsessing over that day and wondering where she could have gone.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen it. I actually have seen this one twice. I showed it to my fiance not that long ago. But she would be into watching it. Actually, I think, no joke, like over the weekend, within the last day or two, there was a point where she was like, you know what movie I want to watch again? The Vanishing.
Nice.
So,
well, this may work out.
Yeah. It seems coincidental.
Indeed.
It's like a plate of shrimp.
Serendipitous. Yes, exactly. All right. Yeah, so again, those choices are Punch Drunk Love, The Great Dictator, and The Vanishing. So go to
I've seen all of these.
Me too.
Yeah, me too. This is a first for me, I think.
Yeah. When you came up with like the villain's theme, I started looking through and gathering like all my choices, and I was like, everything that I can find that fits, I've seen. So I feel like this one's not going to end up with something I'm watching for the first time. All right. Well, I think that does it for this episode then.
I think you're right.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you so much, listener, for listening. And as always, thank you, Jake Wagner Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
That's right. Stay tuned to this feed. Next week, we'll be putting out an episode on Joker. Yeah, and then after that, the next Casually Criterion episode. So lots of good stuff on the way.
That's right. And a reminder, just again, if you want to vote in the poll to choose our next Casually Criterion film, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast.
Yeah, thanks so much for listening, guys. And remember, fight the power.
All right. Bye. I'm going to go commit some crime.
I'm going to go eat some
sushi and not pay for it.
and not pay. All right. I'm stopping.
Yep.
Me too.